Good morning, everybody. It's Marty, the JavaScript party. So I noticed this morning that my little sound um, bar was not working, and then I had to fiddle around with just a little bit, and then it just suddenly started working. So I was at high risk of creating a whole nother video again with absolutely no sound, which is always a pain in the buttocks. All right. So we are on a detour, and there's a bug that I have seen over and over again. Almost every job that I've worked at that was like a highly advanced, like they'll bring me in as like an Angular, like someone that knows has a lot of experience with Angular, and they'll be like, oh, you need to. We have this. They'll even sometimes call it like a greenfield. Oh, we have a greenfield project, but it'll have like 80,000 lines of code already. Um, but one of the sort of patterns that I see over and over again is this cyclic. There's like a cyclic error, uh, and it's just like I normally like can't. These applications are just enormous, and then there's just no like figuring out why it happens. And many, many, many times, this is one of those bugs that like every branch seems to work perfectly, and then when you merge the branches together, suddenly out of nowhere, you have this cyclic bug where that. And so I have, based on moving slowly and surely through the application that I've been working on, I have come to the idea that maybe the problem is when you take a singleton, which is a service that is in for root. When you take a singleton um, and then um, you take another singleton and then you inject them into each other um, via like the injector in the constructor, um, that's what causes it. So that's my idea, and I have been able to sort of demonstrate things that sort of indicate that that might be it in my project, in the main project that we work on in this video stream. That like if I comment out the injection, then the bug goes away, and the bug is only a runtime bug. It's not a it doesn't the transpiler doesn't seem to be able to catch it. So that's my idea. My idea is that you can't you can't take two singletons and inject them into each other, or you're going to get this cyclic thing. And it very much reminds me of like um, whenever you try to stringify a JSON object that has a reference up to itself again, right? So you create a object, and then you make a reference in one of the child objects. You make a reference up to the parent object, and then you can no longer stringify it because it would cause like an infinite loop. So that is so it kind of reminds me of that. I can't figure out, like I'm still trying to figure out like, well, and the most important, see, this is where I think what really messes up a lot of like developers that are like 3 to 5 years into their career is you kind of come up with ideas like this that make total sense, that describe your problem, and you can even spread those to other developers, and then everyone can start believing those ideas, and it could be completely wrong. So what we need, all we really have, is a wild ass guess. That's really all it is. We have to recognize what it is. But even though it is just a wild ass guess, I've been like building additional ideas on top of that, like additional ways of not running into this problem, additional reasons why I run into this problem, and all that. And all of those are all based on what could just not be true. So what I want to do is I want to actually prove it's true or prove it's not true. And I think the way to do that, I think a really good experiment on it. And see, this is where we're like, I guess, into the scientific method, right? The scientific method is that you get a hypothesis, you get an idea, and then you come up with a way to test that idea, and then you run the test against the idea, and you see if the idea is true or not. And that's what we're doing. And I would say that like this is something that people with like degrees in computer science excel at, right? They excel at creating the scientific method, and then once the scientific method is sort of come up with an idea, then sharing it with everybody else. And if nobody else can poke holes into the idea, and you show the experiment, and you show that, then it enters into the world of dogma. Okay, we all just believe this. From now on, we just believe this. It is spoken. It's in the book of science. We do this. But and we'll say I could say that I've been working on this project over a year, and we've only had to resort to this scientific method once. And it's so important at this point because this is a problem, and it is a serious problem, and it's a problem everywhere. And I've never worked at a place where anybody understood what was causing the problem. And so if we can determine what the problem is, that's a very good thing. Anyway, so the first thing I need to do is create a new Angular project so that we can make it uh, as possible. I mean, as so we can make a simple example and see if we have this problem. So the idea is I'm going to create two for root services, and then I'm going to try to inject them into each other and see if we get the problem. If we don't get the problem, then it's something else. And basically, for the last 2 days, I've been creating all these ideas in my head that are all based on this, and all those ideas are wrong. Um, and that is not, and that is what they call being delusional. So at this point, I may be being delusional. I cannot remember. I think it's either ng new or ng add, or maybe something else, to create a new application. I can never remember what it is, but I think I can, since I've installed the Angular CLI, I believe I can do that. I can write help. So I'm going to say npm run help, and that should run this command. And I think since I have the CLI installed, it will actually print something. And I can never remember if it's 2 dashes or 1 dash, um, or maybe no dashes. I guess we can. How do you get help from the Angular CLI? Okay, so it looks like we don't actually. Oh, wait, using dash dash help flag or the dedicated help command. So it looks like you could do either. Maybe that's why I never remember. Um, so it looks like generate and modifies nope based on schematic new creates a new Angular workspace. I wish they would have said Angular application. I think that always confuses me. Okay, so we want to do an ng new. So new, new. So this is a throwaway project. I literally plan to delete it so I can free up disk space at the end of this application. But so we're going to say ng new cyclic. It is 8:51, so I don't have that much time. npm run new. So now this is going to run this command, and it's going to do it against Angular 21, against what's in these node modules. I I literally got into a big argument with my man. I've been just getting phone calls like crazy lately. I think I get like, I don't know, about 3 months ago, I got a phone call from some person, it sounded like, and they were like telling me that I had been in a freaking ambulance like 3 weeks ago, and that I owed like a whole bunch of money, and that I was going to get sued, that we were in collection, and all that. And I was just screaming at this person. And then my wife came in and said, "What is going on, Marty?" And I was like, "This a-hole is saying that I um, was in an ambulance and now they're in collections and blah, 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 blah." And she's like, "Dude, that's an artificial intelligence. It doesn't make any sense. There's no way that you would be in um, collections already, because here in the United States, I believe it's 90 days. I took a whole course on this, and to be a paralegal, and I believe it's 90 days before they can even consider, like they have to give you like three warnings, like, and then 90 days they can put it into collections. They can't just put it in collections in 3 weeks. So now I do not answer my phone. If I don't recognize the number, I absolutely do not answer my phone. Maybe about my phone, I have Verizon and my phone never tells me that have messages. So I have to just, like right now, I just got this. I'll check my messages in a couple minutes. Um, and um, and then I'll do that. But it is funny because I noticed that like if you ever sign up, if you ever get a game or something and then like you accidentally let it have access to your contacts, next thing you know, you'll get a bunch of spam calls with numbers that are very, very similar to your contacts. So obviously all these people are like selling off your list of contacts and then tying it to you. And then the scammers can then get a phone number. I don't know how they get phone numbers, but can get a phone number that points back to you that looks like your contacts and all that. So now when I look at numbers, I'm like, man, that looks so familiar, but it'll be like just a couple numbers off from like one of my contacts. So now I don't like unless it is an absolute unless my phone identifies it as a contact, I don't even consider like not even for 1 second do I consider answering it. And it's even if I'm waiting on a phone call from somebody else because that was like the other thing is that I would get like interviews lined up and then like a couple minutes before the interview all of a sudden I have to start getting hammered with phone calls, which I did find out is like kind of a scheme because like with the old H-1B program, I guess they made changes to it so it's not like this anymore, but with the old H-1B program they had to basically call you up and just absolutely humble you, and then say, see, we can't find any all Americans are just too stupid to do this job. You need to hire an H-1B to do it. So like, and I have actually a lot of computer programming friends that like are like, the interviews are just too hard. I left the whole industry, which is kind of interesting because there's very few Americans even interested in going to computer programming anymore. As far as I can tell, I don't know if that's true or not, but I think it doesn't seem like very many Americans are very interested in going into computer programming anymore. And it's because of this humiliation, like you just get absolutely humiliated. And then because of that, we um, there probably just isn't as much work in general in computer programming, and then that has reduced the amount of work that is available for H-1Bs. So it's like a feedback loop. But as you see, now we have a new project called Cyclic. We have a new application, and in here in our package of this project that got created, a Cyclic project, we have a new start project. So now what we can do is we can do cd cyclic. And then what I will typically do is I will type in code dot. Now that does not work at my job. At my job, code dot doesn't work, but at home it does work. And then so now we have our new project. So I will typically close this down and quite often never ever go back into that project again. And now what we'll do is let's expand this. Let's close this welcome. Let's go to our terminal and new terminal and let's close this thing. And npm start. And we'll just wait for this thing to come up. It's 8:56, so I do need to get off of here just as soon as this comes up. And then, so tomorrow what we'll do is we'll add two services. We'll create two for root services, and then we will inject them into each other and see if the whole thing breaks or not. And if the whole thing breaks at that point, that'll be interesting. I don't know. Maybe we need to actually like inject the services. We must have to inject the services because yeah, it doesn't happen until well, it happens when they inject each other, if I remember correctly. So, which would then make a lot of sense to me because in a lot of places I've worked, like it's just like code that wasn't even like it wasn't even related to me, anything I was working on, and all of a sudden I'm seeing this error after pulling in the latest from dev. Okay, so that's good. Anyway, so that'll do it. Tomorrow we'll add two services, two of these things, Angular language service, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if it said you cannot inject these things. Error checking. I wonder if this is the thing. Let's click on error checking. Doesn't know what orders is. Oh, interesting. All right. So, anyways, happy coding, everybody. Have a wonderful day. It's Tuesday, the 13th of January. It is 30 degrees here in Marietta, Georgia. I went looked outside, and my little thing of water is completely frozen. So that is that. Happy coding. Bye.